Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shanghai International Blockchain Week 2021. My name is Alexis Smith, and I lead developer partnerships here at the DFINITY Foundation. My day-to-day is spent supporting developers and entrepreneurs who are building on the internet computer. As such, I've had the opportunity to watch our ecosystem grow and evolve and to work with some of the early adopters of the internet computer. We're very lucky to be joined by some of these IC pioneers today who will be sharing with us some of their experiences of building on the internet computer and launching successful products. Today, we will be having a conversation with Andra Georgescu, co-founder of Distrikt, Matt Grogan, co-founder and engineer at OpenChat, Hines, co-founder and CEO of Fleek, David Phan, engineering at ORIGYN, and Rick Porter, co-founder of Discover. So with that, I would love to go around and everyone, if you could just introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your team and the product that you're building, that would be great. So Andra, why don't we go ahead and get started with you?
Sure. Distrikt is a professional social media network that lives 100% on the internet computer. Our team is distributed and the project itself is being supported and maintained by the Open Internet Foundation, which is a Swiss not-for-profit organization. We're dedicated to supporting the growth of the open internet, and Distrikt is our first project. We launched the web app in July and the Android app very recently, and we're about to launch the iOS app as well.
Great, thank you, Andra. And Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about OpenChat?
Sure. Hi, Alexa. Yeah, as you said, I'm a co-founder and engineer at OpenChat, which is it's a chat app resembling WhatsApp or Signal or WeChat. The team comprises 3 engineers based in the UK. That's Hamish Peebles, Julian Jelfs, and myself. We launched the version 1 of OpenChat about 4 or 5 months ago, and we've been very busy building sort of V2 version 2, which is due out next month.
And Harrison, why don't we go ahead and pass it to you? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on with the team at Fleek?
Hey everyone, I'm Harrison, co-founder at Fleek. Fleek is a venture production studio, so we build tons of different products on the internet computer. We have Fleek, which is a hosting platform to easily host sites on the internet computer. Plug, which is a wallet for the internet computer, as well as a few other open internet services such as Dab and some more coming in the following weeks and months. So yeah, excited to be here.
Next up, David, why don't you tell us a little bit about ORIGYN?
Yep. Hello, Alexa. Yeah, I'm David, so I'm software engineer at the ORIGYN Foundation. So at ORIGYN, we basically build products, tools, and enterprise solutions to digitize real-life assets into NFTs. So we mint luxury items, art paintings, and digital collectibles.
Perfect. And Rick, I think last but not least, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Discover?
Yeah, my name is Rick Porter. I'm one of the co-founders of Discover. Discover is a social content platform that is currently built on our protocol called Social Fabric. And the idea is Discover is one of the first platforms to be built on Social Fabric. And this allows you to build any kind of decentralized social network inside of a single protocol that anyone else can build their applications on top of.
Great, thank you so much. So with that, I think we're ready to get started with the panel. So today I've prepared a few questions that I'll be asking, and we've also received some submissions from the community in China. So really looking forward to digging in with you all. So to get started, first of all, I love that we have such a great group here that are sort of the OGs of the internet computer. And as Rick mentioned, you've all had the opportunity to work with each other and collaborate. But I think one of the most interesting things is we have folks here who have been building since basically when the SDK and the Motoko programming language was released in the fall of 2019. So we've had folks who were building up to the launch of the network in May of this year. So not to pick on you, but Rick, I know that you were kind of one of the earliest builders on the internet computer. And my question is, how do you think that the experience has evolved? So what was it like building in those early days compared to now?
I remember the very first time we actually saw Motoko, and it was at a presentation in New York, and we were all like freezing the video and like analyzing all the code that was written and trying to determine like how to parse the language on our own without actually understanding it. And so it was pretty exciting. And then we finally got the language, and we got this the SDK at the time, and I remember we got it installed in like 30 minutes, and everyone instantly started hacking on it. It was me, David Phan, who's here, another guy, Austin Fatherly, who's you see him most likely on the forums, and a couple others. And we were pretty much just like group hacking on it all the time. And it was very interesting because we were just trying to figure out like, what can we do with the language? How much can we push it? There was no documentation at the time. So like over time, working with DFINITY, who was really great about, answering all of our somewhat absurd questions at the time, walking us through the language, but it's improved so much. You go to the forums, you see people, it's searchable, it's Googleable. You can actually look up code. You can go to the documentation. You can find so many examples online, and it's a lot easier to, and a lot of more syntactial sugar, right? It's vastly improved the ability to write to Motoko quickly. And so, yeah, I think it's come a long way. What do you think, David?
Yep. Yeah, actually, like I remember like this time actually, like when there was this kind of conference in New York where there is Norton Wang, I think, was doing this kind of demo with this kind of trading platform. I think it was named Assembly Script or Actor Script, I think.
Yes,
Sorry,
it was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
And yeah, after that it got named Motoko. And yeah, I do remember like just trying to reverse engineer like the DFX thing, looking at the bootstrap JavaScript code. So I had to deminify to understand like how the identity was working. But yeah, it was like still like a very, very, very like complex to understand. There's not much documentation, closed source, but we're like having weekly call with you guys. So it was helping a lot around. But right now, like as there is like more and more open sourcing of the libraries and the IC itself, I think it helps a lot. There's forums, Discord. So now we can just discuss with different developers. We still like I keep in touch with Rick. We talked about like internet identity back in May when you just released it at the Genesis event. So I think that yeah, from like back in 2019 to now, it changed a lot, and it's getting better and better.
Yeah. So at Distrikt, we actually started building the platform in early March this year. When we decided to take over LinkedIn, which was the demo app that the DFINITY Foundation put out to showcase how easy it was to build on the internet computer. And to be honest, we had a pretty smooth experience since day one, and having tools like the internet identity and big maps, for instance, has made it possible for us to launch a complex social media platform in just a few months, which is pretty impressive even for Web 2 standards of startups in tech, let alone for a social media platform that's blockchain native and lives on the blockchain. So I think that shows exactly how ready the internet computer is to onboard developers that want to move fast and compete with traditional platforms.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing that. And yeah, from my perspective, working with developers, it's just been amazing to see the community grow and all of the resources that are out there now. And I love watching the community kind of collaborate with one another. So really cool to hear those insights from the early days. So moving on to the next question, I would love to hear a little bit about how the internet computer has enabled your team or your product to do something that would be otherwise impossible, whether that's with centralized tech or with other blockchain stacks. So Matt, I was wondering if you could maybe chime in a bit from your perspective at OpenChat.
Yeah, so in the first version of OpenChat, we focused on building a functional and web speed chat app resembling WhatsApp. And as such, in terms of specific features, there isn't anything that you can do in version 1 that you can't do in other chat apps. However, looking forward a little bit, there will be, there are some exciting things coming. So in terms of some specifics, you're about to send cycles and ICP very soon. And then Bitcoin and Ether soon after, well, as soon as that's supported by the Internet Computer itself. So more broadly, the SNS, upcoming SNS will just revolutionize apps. I mean, I guess we'll probably be talking more about that as we go on. But then more generally, it's provided an opportunity for developers such as yourselves to build apps that compete with traditional IT in terms of performance and capability, but with the positive characteristics of a decentralized system, such as transparency, decentralized governance, and security by default. And this represents a new market opportunity. And the earlier you can be involved, the more likely you are to take a leading position. So I guess, yeah, we feel it's been a great opportunity for us.
And Andra, does that resonate with you too over at the Distrikt team?
Yeah, for us, having the platform completely on the Internet Computer has been revolutionary. It's provided us with a series of benefits that we then transfer to our users as we grow and become user governed. So it gives us an unprecedented level of autonomy. It frees us from platform risk. So this becomes even more obvious in situations like Facebook's massive outage recently. And the IC is designed to be resistant to these types of issues. And that's a huge advantage for any platform that's blockchain native and aiming for mass adoption.
Thanks so much. And Harrison, I know in particular, your team has experience building on other stacks and that you've been in the space for quite some time. Are there any really unique features of the Internet Computer that really excite the team and some of the early opportunities that you saw in building some of the products you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. The low-hanging fruit ones that stood out were just the ability to host front ends, basically natively in smart contracts or canisters. Given our bread and butter product for the past few years has been a hosting service for IPFS, that's been one of the challenges we've faced as a company, and it still required a lot of centralized pieces to make it work and running our own infrastructure to facilitate it. And so that was something that was really attractive to us about the Internet Computer, was the fact that we finally could offer a fully trustless hosting product to users. And then on the other side of things, I'd say, we also power a lot of existing NFT platforms in the Ethereum ecosystem. And again, for the same reason, we are basically storing a lot of the metadata for NFTs that exist on these other platforms. And so it's very interesting to us that on the Internet Computer, you could store not only the token ID, but all the accompanying metadata associated with an NFT. And now just seeing the crazy types of NFTs that are made possible by the Internet Computer, whether it be 3D NFTs or AI-enabled NFTs, we're super excited about that. And we're most excited about what's going to happen once these native integrations with other chains happen and what that might enable. And we think that might be a big inflection point for the whole Web3 ecosystem. So we're really excited about that.
That's great. Thanks, Harrison. That's actually a great lead into my next question, which was, what are some of the upcoming roadmap items or community proposals that you're most excited about? So Harrison, thanks for sharing a few of yours. Matt, any proposals? I know you mentioned SNS. Are there any other proposals that are coming up that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we touched upon it already, and I think this is imminent. I think it might even be ready, which is enabling canister smart contracts to control ICP. So you'll actually be able to send, as chat messages, you'll be able to send ICP as in a few weeks' time, hopefully. So that's going to be very cool. The SNS, yeah, that's just going to be an extraordinary. I mean, I guess it's several months away still, but it will be extraordinary in terms of governance, viral growth opportunities through tokenization, funding through a token auction. That's just going to really just unlock the potential of dApps on the internet computer. And then for us specifically, we're looking to scale to sort of millions of users, hopefully. And at the moment, we're kind of limited to one subnet on the internet computer. So there are various features coming, such as internet canister query calls across subnets. And beyond that, other scalability features such as canister rebalancing and subnet splitting, which are going to enable us then to make use of hundreds of subnets and really scale massively. So that's what some of the things we're looking forward to.
Great. Anyone else want to chime in? I know we have a lot of items out there. So any others that we might have missed that folks are excited about?
Okay, yeah. So in terms of proposal, actually, as well, like building some sort of tokenomics and same time like some sort of DeFi-powered application on top of ICP. So we have this kind of dilemma where how do you pay with stable coins? How do you pay with ECR? How do you pay with Bitcoin? So there's this kind of proposal that are quite interesting that are being worked on by DFINITY. So the threshold ECDSA that allows like canister to hold, like to have an Ethereum a key pair somehow, which will allow actually to send some Bitcoin or some Ether to some canister. So we can interact with Bitcoin and Ether into ICP. So it will allow us to create some DEX or some marketplace. So this one is very important, I think, for bringing, I think, the assets and some value into the internet computer. So we are looking forward to that. And as Matt mentioned around the canister ability to hold and send ICP, we are looking forward to that as we will use that on our beta products. Yeah.
Awesome. And Andra, did you have something you wanted to share as well?
No, basically the guys covered it.
Okay.
We're very excited about the SNS here at Distrikt. I think it will pretty much be a Kickstarter for more and more decentralized autonomous organizations popping up on the internet computer, which is a very interesting space that's growing very rapidly right now. And this is what we're aiming to do with Distrikt. And given the fact that in its final version, this product will be a community building tool that will allow communities to build their own district that's governed by their own community and can be tokenized. So the DFINITY district, has its own token, and so would the design district or some other district. And that the SNS having plugin governance to power these types of community building tool and make it super easy, I think that's mind-blowing for us. We've been talking about little else for the last month.
Great, thanks so much. Perfect. So moving on to my next question. So growth has been pretty explosive over the last few months. I think we can all agree on that. So I was wondering if you would be able to share some stats on adoption and usage of your platform or product. So Harrison, maybe we'll start with you. I know you have a few different products, but anything you can share as far as the kind of the growth that you've been seeing would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So on the Fleek side, we definitely have somewhere over 1,000 sites that are hosted through Fleek on the internet computer. And on the plug side, which is our wallet product, we have 100,000 users across the browser extension. And we have a mobile app coming out in November. So we think that'll lead to another decent jump in growth. But yeah, it's been pretty cool to see and witness. But yeah, those are two that stand out. That's
so great to hear. And Rick, what about you? I know I've been tracking with you for quite some time since Discover's launch.
Yeah, we had quite a bit of growth. We're up to 52,000 users 450,000 posts and comments, and I think about 3.2 million total upvotes on the platform. You know, obviously we've got some interesting users, but we've been adding like CAPTCHA and more ways to track bots. But it's been a very, very interesting road right now, and we're probably going to see a lot of the comments and content and upvotes double over the next month and a half. So we're trying to figure out our multi-canister approach right now. But and also I think it's super important to point out that, you know, like Plug Wallet and Stoic Wallet are an Earth Wallet and possibly Origin Wallet too are on our pipeline to get integrated, so we can help bridge those users onto the platform. And it's worth pointing out the Plug Wallet and the Stoic Wallet integration are complete. It's just figuring out, you know, how do we cross our T's and dot our I's. So we'll figure it out.
Awesome. And Andra, what about you? I know that you, the team kind of launched this early sign up before the official launch of Distrikt, and you saw some really incredible interest in the platform. Anything you can share from that kind of initial sign up period all the way through to today?
Yeah, sure. So we started about 2 months before launching the web app with this reserve your account landing page that had 20,000 signups by the time we launched. But we've been a bit, we haven't yet onboarded everybody that reserved their accounts, because we had the web app first. Now we have Android, and until we have the iOS app and everybody has full access cross device and operating systems, we can really have the accurate number. Right now we're at 50,000. I'm actually looking at the stats right now. we're at more than 50,000 accounts, but we are trying to differentiate between active organic usage of the platform and fake accounts that are not that relevant when we try to get an accurate image on the product's performance. But either way, these numbers are super impressive.
Definitely, yeah. And Matt, I think maybe you're last on the list. What's the growth been looking like for OpenChat?
Yeah, well, I was actually looking back at our Twitter account to find the figures. I hasten to say we're adding better reporting and sort of tracking in V2. But so on July the 5th, we got 10,000 users. August the 16th, 20,000. September the 22nd, 50,000. We're now at 70,000
wow.
users who have sent 400,000 messages. So we haven't actually done very much to the platform, to the app. Since we released it, we fixed a few bugs and we've released a couple of features. But as I say, we've been mainly focused on the sort of just ground up rebuilding to sort of hyperscale, where we'll have a canister per user and a canister per group. And that's been, as I say, our primary focus. However, we did see a big upturn in messages once we released push notifications. I mean, that's obviously pretty essential for a chat app. So I think at the point just before we released it, there were 55,000 users who had sent a little over 100,000 messages. A week later, this had doubled to 200,000, and it's at this point it's 400,000. So that's looking pretty good.
Wow, those are some pretty insane stats. Thank you for sharing that. Perfect. And actually, on the topic of growth, I think one of my favorite things that I've seen has been just the cross ecosystem collaboration. And I know that that's been a huge growth mechanism for quite a few of you. So Rick, I was wondering if maybe you could share a little bit about some of the cross team collaborations and maybe a bit about the hackathons you've been running. Anything to share there?
Yeah, for sure. We've said this, Discover said this from the beginning, is that integrations are going to be key to our success, right? We're going to have to work together. We have to do this together if we're going to succeed. And so an example is Stoic, they had the Tonic, the Starverse drop was kind of our first real big integration. And they just reached out to us and said, hey, can we drop some NFTs to your users? at first it's like, yeah, but like then how do you actually do something like that on the IC? You know, we haven't actually thought about it. We've just preached it at that point. And but that once it became evident of how simple these canisters actually work together and how a lot of these integrations actually don't have to take place on the back end. Some of them can take place on the front end, which, you know, that you see that paradigm within inside of the Ethereum community quite a bit. So it was already, that kind of architecture or thinking was already in place. But since then, as I was saying, you know, integration has been super key. We've integrated with the Plug wallet, the Stoic wallet. We're currently using an analytics service like Google Analytics, built completely on the internet computer called UserGeek. And if you're looking for DAO, WOW, or MAO stats on your users, UserGeek is completely decentralized, built on the IC. So it's been very interesting to see those numbers and watch them grow or shrink depending on you know, the weekend or weekday, right? But other types of integrations that we have planned for the future is you know, Plug or Psychedelic DAO has DAB, and you know, DAB is kind of working towards being a registry, a token registry. And so we've been looking at how do we deeply integrate with the token registry. And I think NFTs are going to be very important to the future, and I'm sure we'll talk about that eventually. But like, how do you restrict certain parts of our websites relative to what NFTs you have? And we expect to be releasing that within the next couple of weeks. And the hackathon too, you know, you had Portal and Metascore and all the different games that, so the Portal and Metascore were platforms. Portal was like Twitch, and Metascore was like score tracking or like a micro Steam. And then you had a bunch of different games, and how they collaborated and integrated with each other definitely shows that all these things are completely possible from a front end or back end perspective. But we hope to see deeper integrations moving forward, things that have absolute dependencies on each other. And it's really cool to see the community. Everyone in the community wants to collaborate. Everyone wants to connect. Yeah. Now it's just figuring out like what makes a smart way of doing this, the right way of doing this. And I think we're going to see a lot more. In a year from now, the idea of integration is just going to be a completely ingrained to the thinking of a typical IC developer. And I don't think it'll even be a conversation. I think it'll just be the base. So, and I want to thank a lot of people, especially, you know, ORIGYN and Stoic and Plug for providing a lot of the rails that people are using right now to get connected. So it's really cool to see that how people are coming together right now and how collaborative they are. I found it's very easy to reach out to anyone in the community right now and have a conversation and try to figure out, how do we actually collaborate? How do we integrate? Because it's not like, you just can't think of it sitting there, you know, right now. It's hard to think like, how do we connect? You know, what is that protocol that we would use, or what is that process that we would use? But I just suggest reaching out to people, coming up with a micro plan. What's your mini plan? What's that mini PRD? Kind of presenting it and going back and forth on it and figuring out what is the easiest way that we can do this. And so there's a lot of different types of ways. Discover right now is trying to get people to integrate widgets within inside of the content that is posted. So like we have polls, but like in the future, like a poll has to be an actual service that is sitting, maybe an NFT itself is sitting in someone else's canister that just kind of exists. But it's easy to facilitate these things over the internet computer, and the community has the right mindset to make these things happen.
Awesome. That is super exciting. And there's a reason why you are the IC pioneers. It's because you're running these experiments and trying things out. And I think probably setting a standard for many teams to come that will want to integrate and collaborate with one another. Harrison, I know Rick mentioned a few ways that the team at Discover has been collaborating with you all, but any other opportunities that you want to share where you've collaborated with other teams in the space?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, we've kind of, by building products ourselves, realized a lot of pain points or missing pieces of infrastructure or tooling that were needed. So Plug Wallet was certainly a good first one and is becoming like a preferred auth and wallet option for a lot of projects. So we've been doing a lot of work with projects in the community to help them with that integration for their different use cases, surface different functionality for their user experience or what their users are going to want to do. But like Rick mentioned, we also have a DAB, which was another problem in building Plug Wallet, where we're trying to provide good experiences for users. So all these projects are launching new NFTs or tokens. So the problem for us was, how do we surface all these assets for users automatically and not require them to add them each time like manually? So that's where this idea for a DAB registry, where projects could add their NFT project to this open registry as an open internet service. Eventually, once the service network system and some of this other tooling comes, that will be like a community owned thing, where now any app building on top of it could just use DAB.js to surface whatever assets they want automatically for the user's principal ID that's authenticated for their app. And so not only did this solve a problem for Plug, but the way we build things is like, well, if it solves a problem for us, it's more than likely going to solve a problem for a lot of other people out there. So why don't we just build this as like a tool for others to use? So it's really exciting to see now other projects understand, hey, this could add value. Hey, I don't have to worry about all these different standards and how I support all of them. You just have this really nice, JS library that abstracts all these issues away and now gives you what you want in terms of a user experience. So that's been really cool because we get to collaborate with a lot of NFT projects and token projects and apps in general between our different products for just authentication solutions, surfacing asset solutions, and some other ones we're working on that we think are going to add a lot of value. So yeah, it's been really cool.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Perfect. So we're going to now take a break from the questions I've prepared and switch gears over to some of the questions that were sent along from our community in China. So anyone can chime in on these, but I will just go ahead and read some of these questions from the community. The internet computer can host the entire dApp, especially the front end. This is the biggest difference between the internet computer and public chains, such as Ethereum and Solana. What application possibilities does this bring? Based on these characteristics, what interesting applications can we see? Anyone want to chime in on this aspect of front-end hosting?
Fully
I'm happy to.
decentralized DAOs, like decentralized autonomous organizations all the way. I think it's going to be a huge boost, especially once we have the SNS. Sorry, Harrison, go ahead.
No worries. Well, I think, you're going to see, especially with these native integrations, that slowly, if you think of what an Ethereum dApp is today, it's like you have some smart contracts on Ethereum, and then basically you use a ton of centralized infrastructure to actually make like the dApp. So you use a service like Infura or Alchemy, or people are starting to use something like the Graph, which is more decentralized. But besides that, you're using centralized infrastructure providers, centralized hosting providers. What will probably happen is once this native integration with Ethereum happens, someone eventually is going to create like an open internet service that's just something like what Infura or Alchemy provides, of just like a database of Ethereum data on the internet computer. So eventually, once you have like this signing capabilities natively from the internet computer, and you have access to the data you need from these networks native to the internet computer, you will start to actually be able to create like these full dApps that essentially live on the internet computer and can call out to these networks. So you could have an Ethereum dApp, or if DFINITY or the internet computer decides to add a Solana native integration, you could have these dApps. But instead of them living on AWS and using, Infura or these centralized providers, all this supporting infrastructure could live on the internet computer and natively call out to the smart contracts on those networks. And so one trend that we think is going to happen is that eventually all dApps will become NFTs, and they'll be fully accessible by users directly from their wallet and not even need to necessarily go through a browser and DNS and stuff. And those will be really unstoppable. So that's sort of like where we see things going. And, you know, it might take a little bit of time, but that seems like a very natural progression that, like the question, whoever asked the question, this is really only possible on the internet computer with its functionality and the roadmap that is being worked on.
Wow, that is pretty amazing. I'm really looking forward to hopefully some of those ideas coming to fruition. And, you know, as we mentioned earlier, some of the collaboration and kind of integrations on the internet computer right now, I think with those other chains being supported, not only from like a bridge perspective, but natively where these apps can actually call one another, like you're describing, Harrison, that's just going to be really amazing to see.
Yeah, just to be clear that if you've got a dApp running on Ethereum, then where, you know, as Harrison said, the front end and various other aspects are running on centralized services, you don't actually have, you know, security and transparency all the way through. You don't have the, you know, properly the characteristics of a decentralized system, and so you can't really be said to be building a dApp, I'd say, unless it's end to end, which you can only do on the internet computer at the moment. So that's yeah, it's the big story for me.
Yeah, and I would say to the point of like SNS and DAOs, you know, on these other protocols, you could really only, you know, turn a backend into a decentralized system and protocol and tokenized, you know, community-owned thing. Now with the internet computer, that now extends up to the app level. So it could be, you know, something like an OpenSea or, you know, some of these other centralized interfaces that connect to the underlying protocols, or just any type of app in general. But now the app itself, which is right now a separate part from the protocol, and also an area of a lot of regulatory like uncertainty in terms of these front end operators. And if you're operating, you know, an unlicensed, you know, derivatives exchange or whatever it might be, you know, the fact that now the interface layer can, you know, not have to be the responsibility of one guy on the team, where the DNS and the hosting is paid for by a company or a person. Now that can be paid for by a DAO and a community, and all the computation could be paid for in cycles. So it's going to open up a whole new design space and like some really cool things.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for chiming in on that. The next question from the community is, what kinds of projects are you most optimistic about on the internet computer? DeFi, social, NFTs, games, all of the above? I know we've touched on a few of these already, but does anyone want to chime in on something that you're particularly excited about?
I'll say something. I think it's the intersection of these applications. I mean, obviously we're super excited about social because we're a social platform, but the intersection, right? We're gonna see new types of marketplaces come out of the way the internet computer is connected. I think it's going to be a lot less focus on, right, this application is specifically for X, Y, or Z. I think you're going to see a lot of interoperability between applications, where applications can be to a user and to the user experience multiple things. It's a composition. And I think, you know, looking forward, that's how these applications are actually going to work. Where we have here in this chat, we have Discover, we have Distrikt, and we have OpenChat. And on the other side, we have Fleek and ORIGYN, right? So am I missing someone? No. So without a doubt, our applications are going to be compositions of each other in some way. And I think that's going to be the actual true game changer with the internet computer, is how we actually come together and how we actually leverage individual components of how we each specialize in our individual areas to come together and build something. But at the core of those are going to be like those crypto primitives, which are like tokens and NFTs. and each one of us are going to be building on the backs of those kind of crypto primitives. So it's going to be super interesting.
Awesome.
And like on top of what Rick said, I think the DeFi space on the internet computer, it's about to really grow. And once, because we're talking about tokenized communities, platforms like microeconomies, and these need a lot of tools in order to communicate and interoperability in terms of tokens and you know, so Distrikt is going to have its own token, and that Distrikt communities on the platform will be able to issue their own tokens, right? And that means that we need to enable them to swap and create like a way for them to trade and use them in a constructive manner, which is a space that will need more exploring and growth.
Well, that's super cool. Yeah, so it sounds like from both Rick and Andra, kind of this, it's not just one use case, it's kind of these cross vertical use cases that we really haven't seen yet on other chains. So, and I know, that's something that I've been really excited to watch as well, particularly from some of the games that have come out of the Discover hackathons, just the use of NFTs, if we think to how explosive kind of Axie Infinity and other play to earn games that use NFTs have been, just seeing that there are 10 to 20 of these games just starting out on the internet computer right now. That's a space that I'm in particular very excited to follow. Great. So we have one last question from the community. The internet computer is very different from Ethereum in terms of architecture, such as no longer sharing state, which brings some problems for composability. How can we achieve composability on the internet computer? So I know we've talked a little bit about this, but anything in particular, maybe around how the internet computer is different as far as how state is retained and shared and things like that. Anything to share? It's a bit more of a technical question, I suppose.
I'll try, but so the idea, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, right? And like DApp Radar is someone we're trying to talk to and figure out, right? How do we give and share a chain of state or all the modifications to our state and what is necessary? Like, if you look at different blockchains, not all modifications to state may not be necessary to be shared, but maybe there's specific intersections of that data that need to be necessary to share. And that's something that we've been thinking about quite a bit, is what kind of interfaces do we need to expose that need to be open and need to be verifiable to the community, that they can actually look at the changes to the state that has happened within inside of Discover. And it needs to be validatable in some way too, right? But I think that's a really good question. But I think there's going to need to be standards that are created, similar to like we come up with ERC 721 standards, we come up with standards, period. But we need to come up with a standard to actually share the changes to state that have happened. And I think I reached out to Norton about this a while ago, is saying like, how do we, like, what can I share with IC Rocks right now that I could, here's a list of all the changes that have happened in Discover, or here's some sort of a log of all the changes that have happened, the state changes that have happened on Discover, and how would I pump that into IC Rocks to kind of give that transparency to the community? But I do think this is something that we're going to have to work together on to figure out what does that interface look like.
That's great. Thank you for those insights. Oh yeah, sure, Matt. Go ahead.
Sorry, I suppose just thinking on, I haven't actually prepared an answer to this question, but just thinking on from what Rick was saying. At the moment, composability hasn't been at the forefront of our minds in OpenChat, although we have been approached by quite a few teams actually who would like to integrate OpenChat. So we do need to think about how we can achieve that. But I mean, a technique you at the first thought you might think, oh well, you can publish, you could sort of push, or you could make update calls to push events somewhere, and then other other systems or other canisters can subscribe to these events. I mean, given the characteristics of the internet computer, that's not massively performant. That's the sort of I guess problem going that route. Otherwise, and something we do in OpenChat is we have communication between lots of canisters. Each user's got their own canister. Groups are in their own canister, and so we have a lot of sort of back and forth. And the pattern that we're sort of using is that we basically sort of state changes become events that are stored in each canister, and then the canisters can query the events, and they sort of have an index that they've queried up to, and so it's sort of a more of a query-based model based on events. I think that could work more, cross-app as well.
Yep, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. The thoughts on composability, sort of at the network level, and then at the application level. That was super interesting. So that concludes the questions that were submitted from the community. I have 2 other questions that will be a bit more of a speed round. So we'll just quickly go through, and if everyone can share their answer, that would be great. So my first question is, how would you describe the internet computer community in 1 word? And we can't repeat any.
I'll go first. So I'll say supporting, very supporting.
I suppose it helps to go first, doesn't it? Otherwise, yeah.
All the words will get used up.
Yeah, exactly. Optimistic.
I would say eclectic.
Oh, I like that.
For me, I would say it's growing. It's growing.
I like that one too.
It's inquisitive. Yes.
Wow, that's great. Those were great descriptors, and I agree with all of them, being part of the community myself. And then the last question I have is a bit more futuristic. I would love to hear where you all think your team or product will be 5 years from now. And no need to go into great detail, but maybe paint us a picture of where you see your team or product in 5 years.
Yeah, so we expect the SNS will be available at some point next year. And this will enable OpenChat to become, as others have said, to become a DAO. And this will mean that a global community of users will decide the sort of direction, the changes to OpenChat through ownership of governance tokens and the action of voting rewards. The code would all be open source. Anyone can contribute and potentially even be paid by tokens, by sort of automatic issuance of tokens. I mean, if the trajectory of the internet computer continues as it is, we would expect to have millions of users and be a viable alternative to existing chat apps. In terms of the team, I mean, I'd love to keep working with Julian and Hamish. Again, who knows whether we'll still be full-time on OpenChat, or maybe we'll have started something new on the internet computer. Anyway, looking forward to it.
Awesome.
I'll go
Andra.
next. We see Distrikt as being completely decentralized and user-governed. In about 5 years' time, Distrikt will probably be very appealing to NGOs or journalists or human rights activists or any other type of organization that values freedom of speech and wants to communicate in a professional manner without fear of censorship or deplatforming. I think that will be one of the goals that Distrikt will achieve on behalf of its users.
Super exciting. Harrison, why don't you take a stab next?
Sure. So in 5 years from now, hopefully we are not a company anymore, but a DAO, where we are just a collection of a bunch of open internet services. And everyone on the Fleek team would hopefully still be a part of this DAO. but also anyone in the community who wanted to be a part of this DAO or like contribute, and just continuing to do what we're doing now, but in a more community driven and owned way.
Very cool. David, what about you and the Origin team? What's in store?
Yep. So I do think that actually by the end of the year, we'll have our beta products released, and we will scale the team like quite a lot. And after that, I think that our wallets and our marketplace will be used maybe by millions of users. Maybe we'll have minted many real life assets. And yeah, that's the idea.
Maybe all of our real life assets will be on Origin in 5 years.
Yep, on the internet, computer, and Origin. Yeah.
And Rick, what about you and Discover?
Yeah, I think Discover in 5 years is going to be the social fabric of the internet, computer, and possibly other multiple other blockchains. It's just going to be the protocol that facilitates us for communication online. And I think this protocol is going to be owned and managed by the users and the communities that are created within inside of this fabric that exists. I mean, the end game is the metaverse, right? And I really think Discover will just simply be some of that fabric that powers that metaverse.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. That was super exciting. I'm excited for 5 years from now, but I'm also very excited about the journey with all of you. So with that actually concludes the panel. I can't thank you all enough for participating and sharing your insights. This was really, really exciting. And thank you again for all of your contributions to the community, for being so collaborative and open with one another. And I'm really excited to be sharing your stories and your insights with the Shanghai International Blockchain Week community. So thank you all again. And thanks everyone for tuning in.